Michael Jackson's performances looked effortless. Every spin, every glide, every sharp movement seemed to happen naturally, as if his body simply knew what to do. But behind that perfection was something audiences rarely saw: hours of exhausting rehearsals, constant repetition, and an almost obsessive attention to detail. Rare rehearsal footage gives us a completely different look at the king of pop. Instead of the lights, costumes, screaming crowds, and massive stages, we see Michael Jackson in ordinary rehearsal rooms, empty arenas, studios, and backstage spaces. And what these moments reveal is extraordinary. The Wiz Dance Workshop. Michael Jackson's transformation into a solo superstar did not happen overnight. One of the earliest glimpses of his development comes from a 1978 workshop for The Wiz. Working alongside choreographer Louis Johnson, a young Michael rehearsed the complex jazz movements required for his role as the Scarecrow. There was no extravagant costume, no massive audience, just Michael in simple rehearsal clothes, completely focused on mastering his movements. What immediately stands out is his flexibility and control. He could throw his body off balance and then recover almost instantly. Every movement had purpose. He was not simply learning choreography. He was learning how to communicate through his entire body. Even at this early stage, Michael was discovering something that would later become one of his greatest strengths: the ability to make ordinary movements look completely extraordinary. The Triumph Tour rehearsals. By 1981, Michael was already developing a much stronger identity as a performer. During rehearsals for the Jacksons' Triumph Tour, he worked alongside his brothers to perfect complicated group routines. But even though everyone was involved, Michael naturally stood out. He repeatedly focused on spacing, timing, transitions, and small details that most viewers would never notice. He was already developing the sharp popping and locking style that would become closely associated with his solo career. If a movement was slightly off, he would repeat it. If the spacing was wrong, he corrected it. Michael understood that a performance was not simply about dancing well. It was about making every person on stage move as one. That attention to precision would become one of the defining characteristics of his career. The making of Thriller. Then came Thriller. In late 1982, Michael began working with choreographer Michael Peters to develop what would become one of the most recognizable dance sequences in music history. The concept was unusual. Michael needed dancers who could look like monsters while still moving with rhythm and musicality. During the rehearsals, he experimented with the famous zombie movements, shoulder movements, stiff postures, and strange walking patterns. The goal was not simply to make the dancers look frightening. They needed to look dead and alive at the same time. Michael helped shape that physical language. What makes rehearsal footage so fascinating is seeing the ideas before they became polished. There was no finished music video yet, no elaborate makeup, no cinematic lighting, just performers experimenting with movement. And somehow, those rough rehearsals eventually became one of the most influential dance performances ever recorded. The moonwalk takes shape. Perhaps one of the most fascinating moments in Michael Jackson's rehearsal history involves his preparation for the Motown 25 performance. In early 1983, private footage showed Michael practicing his routine for Billie Jean. He was working on the backward slide that would soon become known around the world as the moonwalk. There was no roaring crowd, no glittering costume, no famous white glove, just Michael and the floor. He would glide backward, stop, adjust his balance, and try again, then again, and again. The movement looked effortless when millions eventually watched it on television. But rehearsal footage reveals the work behind the illusion. Michael was carefully controlling his weight, timing, foot placement, and heel movements. The moonwalk became legendary because of how effortless it appeared. Yet these private rehearsals show that even seemingly magical movements were built through repetition. Victory Tour technical rehearsals. In 1984, Michael prepared for the Victory Tour. One rare rehearsal recording shows him working inside an empty arena. The atmosphere is completely different from the excitement of a concert. There is no screaming audience. There is no spectacle. Michael is simply testing the stage. He practices his signature spins and toe stand movements while checking how the surface responds beneath his feet. He also communicates with technicians about lighting and sound. This reveals another side of Michael Jackson. He was not only a performer, he was deeply involved in production. He wanted to know exactly where the spotlight would hit. He wanted movements to be visible from the back of the arena. He understood that a tiny gesture could disappear in a massive stadium unless it was perfectly timed and properly illuminated. For Michael, every technical detail mattered. Captain EO. By 1986, Michael was entering another world entirely. Captain EO required him to perform choreography for a futuristic 3D cinematic experience. Rehearsal footage shows Michael practicing while wearing a heavy prototype version of his space costume. The outfit restricted his movement, forcing him to adapt. But instead of allowing the costume to limit his performance, Michael modified his choreography around it. His famous popping and isolation movements remained sharp despite the additional weight. He also worked closely with the production team to determine the correct angles for the camera. This was another example of Michael's ability to adapt. Whether he was performing in a concert, a music video, or a futuristic film, he understood how movement needed to change according to the environment. The Bad Era. When the Bad Era arrived in 1987, Michael's image changed dramatically. The choreography became more aggressive. The movements became sharper. And the street dance influence became impossible to miss. During rehearsals for the famous subway sequence, Michael worked with choreographer Jeffrey Daniel. In simple rehearsal clothes, he practiced rapid spins, sudden stops, powerful gestures, and intense body movements. Without the leather clothing and cinematic setting, the choreography looks almost mathematical. Michael was breaking down every movement. He wanted the gestures to communicate confidence and attitude. The final music video made those movements look spontaneous. But the rehearsal footage shows how carefully that appearance was constructed. The Way You Make Me Feel. Another 1987 rehearsal offers a different kind of lesson. For The Way You Make Me Feel, Michael worked with a group of male dancers to perfect synchronized movements. The focus was timing. Every dancer had to move at exactly the same moment. Michael repeatedly watched the mirrors, checking the alignment of the group. Even while appearing relaxed and playful, his attention never left the details. This was one of his greatest abilities. He could create choreography that looked natural and spontaneous while maintaining incredible precision underneath. The Smooth Criminal Lean. Then there was the famous Smooth Criminal Lean. The movement appeared almost physically impossible. Michael seemed to bend dramatically forward without falling. But the illusion required extraordinary physical control and careful engineering. Early testing involved determining how Michael could shift his center of gravity safely. Rehearsal footage reportedly shows experiments with harnesses and prototypes before the final stage technology was developed. Watching the process removes some of the mystery. The lean was not simply a dance move. It involved balance, strength, choreography, and engineering. The final illusion became one of Michael Jackson's most recognizable visual trademarks. Bad Tour soundchecks. In 1987, Michael also performed private soundchecks during the Bad Tour. One rare recording captures him inside an enormous empty stadium in Tokyo. There is no audience, no screaming, just Michael, the stage, and the music. He uses the empty performance space to test his footwork and movement. He checks the surface. He experiments with glides and sudden stops. There is something almost peaceful about watching him rehearse in this environment. Away from the spotlight, he appears completely absorbed in his craft. The private warm-up. Perhaps even more revealing is backstage footage from the 1988 U.S. leg of the Bad Tour. Michael is preparing before a performance. There is no elaborate rehearsal setup. He is simply warming up in a cramped backstage area. He performs spins and sharp movements without music. His body seems to follow an internal rhythm. You can hear his shoes striking the floor. Every movement prepares him for what is about to happen next. Minutes later, he would walk onto a stage in front of tens of thousands of people. But this quiet preparation was part of what made that performance possible. Black or white. By 1991, Michael was exploring dance from around the world. During rehearsals connected to Black or White, he worked with performers representing different cultural dance traditions. Instead of simply teaching his own style, Michael studied movements from other traditions and attempted to incorporate them into his choreography. He experimented with different rhythms and movements, combining them with his own popping and locking techniques. The process showed another side of his creativity. Michael was constantly searching for new influences. He was not satisfied with repeating what he had already done. He wanted to evolve. Dangerous. During the Dangerous era, Michael's choreography became even more mechanical and precise. Working with choreographers including Travis Payne and Lavelle Smith Jr., he developed movements based on sharp angles, hand isolations, and highly controlled gestures. The famous time movements and geometric choreography required incredible synchronization. The rehearsals reveal how much calculation existed beneath the performance. Every hand movement, every head turn, every step, everything had to happen at precisely the right moment. Super Bowl 27. In 1993, Michael Jackson transformed the Super Bowl halftime show. The rehearsal process reveals just how carefully the performance was designed. One of the most striking ideas was actually stillness. Michael understood that he did not have to dance constantly to command an enormous stadium. Sometimes standing completely still could be more powerful. For more than a minute, his silhouette and presence became the focus. The audience waited. The tension grew. And when the performance finally exploded into movement, the contrast made it even more dramatic. Michael understood spectacle at a level few performers ever reached.